The sky above the African savanna tore open, unleashing a deluge that transformed the parched earth into a churning river of mud and leaves. Thunder, a primeval roar, echoed across the vast plains, shaking the very foundations of the small, resilient outpost. Rain lashed against the corrugated iron roof of the main lodge, a relentless drumming that drowned out all other sounds, save for the occasional desperate cry of a bird seeking shelter. It was a storm of epic proportions, the kind that reminded humanity of its humble place in the grand scheme of nature. And yet, within this tempest, something extraordinary was about to unfold. A reunion 12 years in the making, forged in kindness and tested by the wild. In the heart of this remote sanctuary, nestled deep within the untamed beauty of the continent, lived Sarah, an American by birth, but wholeheartedly African by spirit. Her hands, though calloused from years of tending to injured creatures and managing a sprawling conservancy, moved with an almost ethereal grace as she double-checked the latches on the enclosures. Her striking blue eyes, usually alight with fierce determination and an unwavering love for the wild, were currently shadowed with concern as the storm intensified. Every gust of wind seemed to whisper tales of fragile lives on the edge, of young animals battling against the elements. Sarah wasn't just a wildlife conservationist. She was a lifeline, a guardian angel for the voiceless. Her sanctuary wasn't merely a collection of rescued animals. It was a testament to her profound belief in second chances, a belief born from countless battles won and lost, but always fought with every fiber of her being. She had dedicated her entire adult life to this unforgiving yet endlessly rewarding landscape, driven by an unshakable conviction that every creature deserved a chance to thrive. It wasn't just a job, it was her very essence. 12 years before, the relentless African sun had baked the earth to a brittle crisp, a stark contrast to today's watery fury. A much younger Sarah, barely out of her 20s, had been on a routine patrol when a glint of metal caught her eye, a sinister flash against the muted greens and browns of the bushveld. Her heart had plummeted as she identified the source, a cruel, illegally set snare, and in its unforgiving grip, a small, terrified form. A leopard cub. Its raw, desperate cries had pierced the silence, a sound that etched itself into Sarah's very soul. The cub, no more than 6 months old, was barely clinging to life, its fur matted with blood and dust, its eyes glazed with pain and fear. The snare had bitten deep into its hind leg, a brutal reminder of humanity's destructive reach. A wave of nausea, cold and sharp, had washed over Sarah. She understood the odds. Many animals caught in snares succumbed to their injuries, infection, or the sheer terror of their predicament. But looking into those fading golden eyes, a spark of defiance, of raw will to live, had ignited something fierce within her. She couldn't leave it. She wouldn't. With a silent prayer and a surge of adrenaline, fueled by a desperate hope, she had sprung into action. The memory of that moment, the cub's struggle, her own frantic efforts to free it, remained as vivid as if it had happened yesterday. It was a memory that shaped her, defining her commitment to every creature that crossed her path. This passion, this unwavering dedication, is what drives Sarah every single day. If you find her story as compelling as we do, if you believe in the power of compassion and the incredible resilience of wildlife, then please consider subscribing to our channel and joining us on this incredible journey. Your support helps us share more inspiring tales from the heart of the wild. The initial days following Nala's rescue were a delicate dance between desperation and hope. Sarah transformed a section of her research station into a makeshift infirmary, its concrete floors softened with an assortment of blankets and straw. The cub, no older than 4 months, was a tangle of fear and pain, her eyes glazed with fever, her small body trembling uncontrollably. Sarah knew the statistics. Wild animals, especially predators, rarely survived such severe trauma in captivity, let alone thrived enough for reintroduction. Yet, Nala's faint, ragged breathing was a constant whisper of defiance. Sarah spent countless hours by her side, administering antibiotics with a gentle hand, carefully cleaning the festering wound on her hind leg, and coaxing small amounts of rehydration fluid into her. The rehabilitation process was arduous, demanding every ounce of Sarah's expertise and patience. She meticulously tracked Nala's temperature, respiration, and appetite, her notes filling entire journals. Slowly, painstakingly, the fever subsided. The infection receded, leaving a jagged scar that would forever mark Nala's resilience. But physical recovery was only one piece of the puzzle. The true challenge lay in nurturing Nala's innate wildness. Sarah understood that bonding too deeply with the cub could be a death sentence upon release. She had to be a caregiver, not a companion. This meant minimizing direct human interaction once Nala's health stabilized. She started by wearing neutral, scent-free clothing, avoiding eye contact when possible, and speaking in low, monotonous tones. She placed mirrors in Nala's enclosure, hoping to foster a sense of her own species, even if it was just a reflection. The scientific community, while commending Sarah's dedication, expressed deep skepticism. Releasing a hand-reared leopard, especially one that had suffered such a debilitating injury, was considered a long shot at best, a cruel experiment at worst. Colleagues warned of Nala's likely inability to hunt effectively, her potential fear of other leopards, or her dangerous lack of fear towards humans, any of which could lead to a swift, tragic end in the harsh African wilderness. Doubts echoed through phone calls and email exchanges, questioning the ethics of returning an animal so vulnerable to a world it was barely equipped to survive. Sarah, however, was resolute. She believed in Nala's spirit, her inherent instincts. Her innovative methods focused on subtle conditioning rather than overt training. She introduced live prey into increasingly larger enclosed spaces, starting with small rodents and gradually moving to larger, faster species. She installed motion-activated scent dispensers that mimicked the presence of rival predators or potential mates, forcing Nala to develop heightened awareness and evasive maneuvers. Enrichment activities weren't toys, but rather puzzles that required problem-solving skills crucial for hunting and survival. Carcasses were hidden, requiring Nala to track and scavenge. She created mock territorial boundaries within her expansive enclosure, observed Nala's reactions to unfamiliar sounds of the bush played through hidden speakers, and even utilized drones to simulate aerial threats, training the cub to seek cover without direct human intervention. Every decision, every action, was a calculated step towards preparing Nala for a life where Sarah would no longer be her protector. The goal was not to make Nala tame, but to fully awaken the formidable predator that lay dormant within her. Sarah clung to the hope that, given the right tools, Nala would remember her true nature and reclaim her rightful place in the wild. The day of Nala's release dawned with a stark, almost oppressive quietude. Sarah remembered the air, thick with anticipation, heavy with the weight of her hopes and fears. It was the culmination of months of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and unwavering dedication. Nala, now a sleek, powerful young leopard, was housed in a specially designed enclosure bordering the vast wilderness she was destined to reclaim. Sarah had spent the preceding weeks gradually reducing her direct contact, allowing Nala to acclimate to the absence of human presence, encouraging her innate wildness to fully emerge. Yet, as the moment drew near, an undeniable ache settled in Sarah's chest. Releasing Nala wasn't just about opening a gate. It was about letting go of a piece of her own heart, a tangible testament to her belief in second chances. She watched Nala from a hidden vantage point as the team carefully positioned the transport crate, its door open to the untamed expanse beyond. Nala paced restlessly inside, her amber eyes scanning the unfamiliar landscape, twitching her tail with an almost imperceptible hint of trepidation. Every scientific metric, every behavioral observation pointed to Nala being ready. She could hunt, she understood territorial markers, and she displayed a healthy fear of humans she didn't recognize. But the wild was merciless, unforgiving. Would her hand-reared beginnings leave her vulnerable? Would she remember the soft touch of a human hand when faced with a snarling hyena? These questions gnawed at Sarah's resolve, threatening to undermine the very act she knew was Nala's only true path to a natural life. The plan was meticulous, a soft release, gradually allowing Nala to venture further from the sanctuary's periphery, with remote tracking collars providing crucial data on her movements and well-being. But nothing could truly mitigate the inherent risks. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat as Dr. Eris, the lead veterinarian, gave the final nod. The gate to the transport crate was gently drawn open, revealing a sun-drenched pathway leading into the dense, whispering foliage of the African bush. A profound silence fell over the small group of onlookers, each holding their breath. Nala emerged slowly, cautiously, one powerful paw after another. She hesitated at the threshold, her head low, ears swiveling, taking in the myriad scents and sounds of her birthright. Her muscles rippled under her spotted coat, a picture of nascent strength and cautious elegance. Sarah felt an overwhelming surge of emotion, pride, trepidation, and a deep, abiding love. This was it. This was the moment of truth. For what felt like an eternity, Nala stood frozen, a statue poised between two worlds. Sarah found herself silently pleading, willing her to go, to embrace the freedom she had fought so hard to give her. Then, as if an invisible thread had snapped, Nala raised her head, her gaze sweeping across the horizon. A flicker of something primal ignited in her eyes, a spark of recognition for the wildness that called to her. With an almost imperceptible shift of weight, and then a sudden explosive burst of energy, Nala was gone. She sprang, not walked, into the dense undergrowth, a tawny streak disappearing into the dappled light. The sound of her departure was barely a rustle, quickly swallowed by the vastness of the landscape. Sarah's eyes, stung with unshed tears, strained to catch a final glimpse. But Nala had vanished, seamlessly reintegrating into the tapestry of the wild. An immense void opened in Sarah's heart, a physical sensation of loss, yet it was swiftly accompanied by a soaring sense of triumph. Nala had gone home. The connection, however, remained, an invisible tether that time and distance could never truly sever. Sarah knew, with an unshakable certainty, that a part of her would always be out there, alongside Nala, roaming free under the vast African sky. The uncertainty of Nala's long-term survival remained a persistent whisper, a shadow lurking at the edges of Sarah's hope. But for now, she could only hold onto the image of that powerful leap into the wilderness. 12 years had unfolded since that poignant day, each one adding another layer of experience and dedication to Sarah's remarkable journey. The void Nala had left was never entirely filled, but it transformed into a powerful wellspring of motivation, fueling Sarah's relentless pursuit of conservation. The sanctuary, once a smaller, more intimate operation, had flourished under her unwavering leadership. Its reputation had grown, attracting international researchers, passionate volunteers, and much-needed funding. What began as a refuge for injured animals now encompassed vast tracts of protected land, serving as a vital corridor for numerous species. Sarah, now in her late 40s, carried the wisdom of countless sunrises and sunsets in the bush. Her hands, though still capable of the most delicate care, bore the marks of years spent building, healing, and advocating. She had saved countless more creatures: elephants orphaned by poaching, rhinos injured in territorial disputes, and myriad birds caught in snares. Yet, Nala's memory remained a powerful, almost tangible presence, a benchmark against which all other rehabilitation successes were measured. Sarah often found herself gazing across the sprawling savanna at dusk, a subconscious search for a familiar silhouette, a fleeting hope that somewhere out there, Nala thrived. The sanctuary now prioritized community engagement, understanding that true conservation began with the people who shared the land with wildlife. Educational programs for local villages, sustainable farming initiatives, and anti-poaching patrols staffed by trained locals were integral to its mission. Sarah believed passionately that protecting animals meant empowering communities, fostering a shared sense of ownership over the natural heritage that surrounded them. Her days were a whirlwind of administrative duties, field excursions, and mentoring a new generation of aspiring conservationists who looked to her as an almost legendary figure. Despite the sanctuary's growth and the myriad new challenges it presented, Sarah maintained a deep connection with the wild heart of the land. She still walked the perimeter trails daily, observing, listening, feeling the pulse of the ecosystem. It was during these quiet patrols that she began to notice subtle shifts, changes that, at first, seemed insignificant, but slowly began to coalesce into a pattern. Her experienced rangers, equally attuned to the nuances of the bush, also reported unusual occurrences. There had been an uptick in impala kills reported closer to the sanctuary's eastern buffer zone, a territory traditionally associated with wild dogs or hyenas, not typically leopards. More perplexing were the unique vocalizations heard at night, distinct from the rough cough of a male leopard or the softer calls of transient females. These particular sounds carried an almost melodic quality, a throaty purr that resonated deeply within the chest, a sound Sarah hadn't consciously heard in years, yet felt unsettlingly familiar deep in her bones. Footprints, too, offered tantalizing clues. While leopard tracks were not uncommon, some print sets were notably larger than others, indicating a powerful, mature female, often accompanied by much smaller, more delicate impressions. These sightings were always on the fringes, never deep within the sanctuary where human activity was frequent, but consistently at the threshold of the wild, bordering the human-protected lands. The rangers initially dismissed it as a new, shy leopard establishing a territory. But Sarah harbored a growing, unspoken suspicion. She meticulously reviewed the trail camera footage, pausing, rewinding, scrutinizing every fleeting image. The quality wasn't always perfect, obscured by foliage or the shifting light, but there was a glimpse, a flash of a distinctive rosette pattern, a particular gait that sent a shiver down her spine. The whispers of the wild were growing louder, carrying a resonance that felt uncannily like a memory awakening. Something was shifting in the delicate balance of their wilderness, and Sarah felt it in her bones. The quiet anticipation began to build, a subtle crescendo of nature's mysterious orchestration. 12 years had indeed passed since Nala's magnificent leap into the unknown, a period during which Sarah's initial sorrow had transmuted into a quiet, enduring hope. The sanctuary itself had flourished, expanding its reach, its research, and its impact on the surrounding ecosystem. But the relentless passage of time held little sway over the sheer unpredictability of the African continent. This particular afternoon, the sky, which had hours earlier been a placid canvas of pale blue, began to darken with an ominous speed. A strange, metallic tang filled the air, a precursor to the violent atmospheric upheaval brewing on the horizon. The wind, until then a gentle whisper through the acacia trees, abruptly transformed into a howling gale, thrashing branches and kicking up miniature dust devils across the dry earth. Sarah, accustomed to the sudden shifts in weather, felt a prickle of unease that went beyond the usual concerns for her staff and the animals. This felt different, heavier, charged with an almost primal energy. She watched from the sturdy veranda of her modest living quarters as the distant mountains blurred into an indistinct gray mass, swallowed by the rapidly approaching storm front. The air grew thick, humid, suffocating, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. Then, with a deafening crack of thunder that reverberated deep in her chest, the heavens opened. It wasn't just rain. It was a vertical river, a furious deluge that instantly transformed the familiar landscape into a shimmering, chaotic expanse of rushing water and swirling mist. The visibility plummeted to mere feet, and the rhythmic drumming on the corrugated iron roof of her cabin became a relentless, overwhelming roar. Trees bent and swayed precariously, their leaves torn and scattered by the ferocious wind. Rivers, typically docile trickles during the dry season, swelled into raging torrents, carving new paths through the thirsty earth. This was a storm of epic proportions, one that threatened not just comfort, but survival itself. The immediate concern, of course, was for the perimeter fences, the animal enclosures, and the safety of her team. But as the storm reached its terrifying crescendo, an unsettling series of sounds began to penetrate the din. It started subtly, a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the cabin, distinctly different from the usual calls of the resident wildlife. Then came a series of soft thumps, as if something heavy was moving deliberately, yet stealthily, just outside her walls. The sounds were oddly rhythmic, almost purposeful in their approach. Sarah's heart began to pound a frantic drumbeat against the tempest. She knew the sounds of every animal inhabiting the sanctuary, every bird, every nocturnal creature. These noises were unfamiliar, yet imbued with a strange sense of proximity. It wasn't the panicked scramble of an antelope seeking shelter, nor the distant roar of a lion marking territory. This was closer, more intimate, and imbued with an undeniable predatory presence. She moved cautiously towards the window, pressing her face against the cold, condensation-streaked pane, trying to peer through the opaque curtain of rain and gloom. The wind shrieked like a banshee, and the relentless downpour made seeing anything beyond a few feet virtually impossible. Yet, the sounds persisted, growing louder, more distinct. A soft, almost plaintive meow, surprisingly close, followed by another low growl, clearly a warning. Her mind raced, sifting through possibilities. Was it a lone leopard, driven by the storm, seeking unusual shelter? Perhaps an injured animal, disoriented and vulnerable. But there was something else in those sounds, a unique inflection that teased at the edges of her memory, something profoundly stirring, yet elusive. The hairs on her arms stood on end. A profound sense of unease settled over her, chilling her to the bone despite the humid air. This wasn't just a storm. Something was happening, something deeply significant, right outside her door. The sounds were too deliberate, too persistent, too close to be random. They spoke of an intelligence, a purpose, lurking just beyond the threshold of her perception, waiting amidst the storm's fury. The storm raged with an intensity that bordered on the apocalyptic, a true African tempest unleashing its fury upon the sanctuary. Rain lashed down in sheets, rendering the familiar landscape a blurred, impressionistic painting of greens and browns. Thunder cracked overhead, a primal roar that vibrated through the very bones of the earth, followed by blinding flashes of lightning that momentarily illuminated the chaos. Sarah, clad in heavy-duty waterproofs, struggled against the fierce wind, her face grim as she made her rounds. The primary concern was always the animals, ensuring all enclosures were secure, checking for fallen branches, and making sure the perimeter fences held strong against the onslaught. This was not just a deluge. It was a force of nature testing every defense, every carefully constructed barrier. She moved with an practiced urgency, her powerful flashlight beam cutting through the gloom and the driving rain, searching for any sign of trouble. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at her hood, trying to snatch the light from her hand. It was during one particularly violent gust, as she neared the western boundary, a section of older, less reinforced fencing, that her beam caught something unusual. A movement, not the swaying tree branches, nor the frantic scurry of a small animal seeking shelter. This was larger, more deliberate. Her heart gave a sudden, surprised lurch. She paused, straining her eyes, battling the rain that stung her face. The next flash of lightning, brighter and longer than the last, momentarily etched a silhouette against the tumultuous sky. It was undeniably a large furball, unmistakably feline, powerful and predatory, standing defiantly in the deluge. But it wasn't alone. Smaller, shadowy forms moved around its legs, barely visible in the ephemeral glow. Sarah blinked, shaking her head as if to dislodge rainwater from her vision, but the image persisted. Adrenaline surged through her veins, overriding the chill of the storm and the exhaustion from her relentless patrols. This couldn't be. As the thunder rolled away, leaving a brief, eerie silence, Sarah felt an inexplicable pull, an instinctual recognition that transcended the blurring effects of the rain. She moved closer, cautiously, her steps measured, her flashlight now fixed on the figure. Another lightning strike. This time, the illumination was clearer, sharper. The leopard turned its head, its eyes reflecting the brief, intense light, locking onto Sarah's. And in that instantaneous connection, in that profound, familiar gaze, Sarah knew. The unique rosette patterns on its flank, the slight kink in its tail, and then, unmistakable even in the driving rain, the faint, jagged scar just above its left shoulder, the indelible mark from the snare, etched into her memory, forever linking them. It was Nala. A choked gasp escaped Sarah's lips, swallowed by the wind. 12 years. 12 long years of wondering, of hoping, of silently praying for this moment. Nala. She was here. And then the revelation of the smaller forms solidified, resolving into clarity within the chaos. 3 tiny, wet, spotted bundles huddled close to Nala's powerful legs, peering out at the world with the innocent curiosity of cubs. Nala had not just survived. She had thrived. She had become a mother. The powerful wild leopard, once a helpless cub in Sarah's hands, had returned. Not alone, not just seeking shelter from the storm, but bringing her progeny, her legacy, back to the very place where her life had been saved. It was an astonishing, almost sacred homecoming. The rain continued its relentless assault, blurring the line between the wild and the sanctuary, yet in that Sungan, amid the swirling chaos, time seemed to halt for Sarah. The sheer impossibility of the moment pressed down on her, heavier than the storm itself. Nala, the leopard she had nurtured from the brink of death, stood before her, not as a ghost of the past, but as a vibrant, powerful matriarch, her eyes holding that same intelligent depth Sarah remembered so vividly from 12 years ago. It wasn't just recognition in Nala's gaze. It was something deeper, an ancient understanding passing between species, a silent acknowledgement of their shared history. The cubs, startled by the brief lightning flashes, pressed closer to their mother, their tiny bodies trembling slightly against her flank. Nala, despite her formidable presence, exuded an aura of protective calmness. She didn't snarl, didn't retreat, didn't display the usual cautious aggression of a wild leopard encountering a human in her territory. Instead, she simply watched Sarah, her head slightly bowed, a gesture that, in its subtle vulnerability, spoke volumes. It was an unspoken invitation into her world, a trust bestowed without a single sound, a bond reaffirmed across years and the vastness of the wild. Sarah felt an overwhelming wave of emotion wash over her, a mixture of profound relief, exhilarating joy, and an almost spiritual connection that transcended logic. Every fiber of her being urged her to reach out, to touch the magnificent creature, to confirm this unbelievable reunion wasn't a figment of her storm-addled imagination. Yet, years of training, of respecting the boundaries between human and wild, held her rooted to the spot. This was not a pet, but a wild animal, a formidable hunter who had navigated the treacherous African landscape, raising a family against impossible odds. To break that fragile trust, that delicate balance, would be a betrayal of everything she stood for. So, she simply stood there, a silent sentinel in the thundering rain, tears mingling with the deluge on her cheeks. The cubs, emboldened by their mother's composure, began to stir, their little heads peeking out from behind Nala's legs. One, particularly curious, took a hesitant step forward, its tiny paws sinking slightly into the mud, its large, innocent eyes fixed on Sarah. Then another, and another, until all three were visible, a living, breathing testament to Nala's extraordinary journey and Sarah's unwavering belief. In that instant, every doubt, every skeptical comment from colleagues who had questioned Nala's chances of survival, every lonely night Sarah had spent wondering about her fate, dissolved into the roaring wind. This was the ultimate vindication, the most undeniable proof of concept. Nala had not only survived, she had flourished. She had conquered the wilderness, raised a family, and, in an act of breathtaking trust, returned to show it all to the woman who had given her a second chance at life. The encounter was a stark reminder of the resilience of nature, the powerful instinct to thrive, and the unexpected ways in which bonds can endure. It wasn't just Nala's survival that was confirmed. It was the success of Sarah's entire philosophy, her belief that compassion and intelligent intervention could, against all odds, tip the balance in favor of a wild creature. The scene unfolding before her was a living validation, a vibrant, spotted tapestry woven from hope, dedication, and an unshakable faith in the wild heart. The storm raged on, but within that small, illuminated circle, a profound peace settled, a silent celebration of life and undying connection. The silent communion between human and leopard, forged in the heart of the storm, stretched on, a tableau of profound trust and miraculous reunion. Time seemed to lose all meaning in that moment, measured only by the rhythm of the sheeting rain and the steady, watchful gaze of the powerful feline mother. Sarah, soaked to the bone and shivering, felt no cold, only an overwhelming warmth spreading through her chest. Nala, her eyes still locked with Sarah's, took a hesitant step forward, then another, a silent invitation, a gesture that spoke volumes without a single sound. The cubs, emboldened by their mother's composure, started to stir, their little heads peeking out from behind Nala's protective form, their dark, curious eyes reflecting the faint beam of Sarah's flashlight. It was a delicate dance, a fragile balance of wild instinct and remembered affection. Sarah maintained a respectful distance, her heart aching with both joy and a deep understanding of the boundaries that still existed between their worlds. She knew Nala hadn't returned to be domesticated, but to show perhaps a memory of kindness, a testament to a life saved long ago. The storm, as if bowing to the intensity of the moment, began to subside. The fierce winds lessened their howl, the torrential downpour softened to a steady drumming, and eventually, the first faint whispers of dawn began to paint the eastern sky with hues of gray and soft purple. As the light grew, so did the realization that this extraordinary encounter was drawing to a close. Nala, with a soft, almost imperceptible flick of her tail, turned her head towards the deepest part of the conservancy. Her gaze lingered on Sarah for one last, lingering moment, a silent acknowledgement, a shared secret between two beings from vastly different realms. Then, with a fluid grace that belied her powerful build, she melted into the receding shadows, her cubs trotting dutifully at her heels. They disappeared as silently as they had arrived, leaving behind only the damp earth, the lingering scent of rain, and an echo of a miracle. Sarah stood there for a long time, the silence of the aftermath broken only by the drip of water from the trees. The physical presence of Nala and her cubs was gone, but their visit had left an indelible mark on her soul. This wasn't merely a leopard returning. It was a living, breathing validation of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of doubt she had battled over the years. Nala's thriving existence, exemplified by the healthy, curious cubs, was the purest form of success, a testament to the profound interconnectedness of all life. It reinforced Sarah's unwavering belief that a single act of kindness, extended across species, could ripple through generations, creating a legacy that transcended human understanding. The memory of that night became a cornerstone of the sanctuary's mission, a powerful anecdote whispered among rangers and shared with passionate donors. It underscored the fragile beauty of the wild and the enduring impact that thoughtful conservation could achieve. Sarah continued her work with renewed vigor, her heart filled with a quiet confidence, knowing that somewhere out there, Nala and her thriving family roamed free, a living monument to compassion and resilience. This journey, from a trapped cub to a magnificent mother, reminds us all of the profound responsibility we bear towards the natural world. If Nala's story touched your heart, if it ignited a spark of hope or wonder, then we invite you to become a part of our ongoing mission. Like this video, share it with others who believe in the power of conservation, and subscribe to our channel to join us as we continue to share more incredible stories from the wild. Tales of survival, hope, and the unbreakable bonds that tie us all together on this magnificent planet. Together, we can ensure that future generations of Nalas and their cubs will always have a wild place to call home.